Two gigantic upsets, two new champions, two very different looking fights, and a lot of questions to ask coming out of the UFC's final pay-per-view in the States. Let's break it all down. UFC 323 puts a bow on the pay-per-view era in the United States as they will move over to Paramount and CBS and all of that next year. Not a whole lot going on with that organization, right? Weird times in the television market in North America, but they close with a bang and a very, very exciting fight wrapping up the pay-per-view calendar as Petr Yan is the Bantamweight champion again, beating Merab Dvalishvili. Unanimous decision, 249-46 scorecards and a 48-47. 48-47 matched up with mine. That's where I went on the scorecard. That's what I had for Yan. Excellent fight. I get Petr Yan, a former champion. That might be the best he has looked. Considering the opposition and everything like that, the stakes, all of that, that probably the most impressive performance of Petr Yan's career. And no one was beating that guy on Saturday. Like, this was a fight more of Petr Yan won than Merab lost. Like, this was more what Yan did right than Merab did wrong. And the big thing was the takedown defense for Yan. That won him this fight. It kept the fight where it needed to be. It kept him up early. And I think the most important part was that it made Merab work. And that dude has a gas tank for days. But you could see as the fight went on, he's wearing out. Merab is wearing down. He's not getting there. He's not getting to what he needs. He is not having the same kind of controlling performance that he normally has. And that is because he's having to work so hard on these takedowns. I would put up the takedown stats. I think the way they measure takedowns are ridiculous. Where he had like five takedown attempts between shooting in and getting to the fence. I can get a couple when you're trying to transition from move to move, but either way, he defended all of them but a couple. He was excellent in that. And because of that, again, it makes Merab work and it keeps the fight where Yan wants it to be. And that is in the stand-up where he was excellent. The body work getting a lot of the attention, especially like from the third round on. The body kick that sounded like he hit him with a baseball bat was incredible. Couple good hooks to the body as well. But I thought it was the jab that kind of set the tone for the fight. It was the body work that I think kind of sealed the deal, but it was the jab that got Merab on the back foot for a lot of this. And I thought it was great. Oh, Sutern in the chat saying UFC was the worst ever. Just admit it. I disagree. Like I thought it was a really entertaining fight. I thought it was a really, really entertaining fight on Saturday. I thought again, the jab from Yan keeping Merab on his back foot, because Merab, he is all gas, no brakes, right? He is forward, forward, forward. But that jab, and this is what you really want to drive home to a lot of fighters. It's a lot of jabs in MMA, boxing too, but it's kind of just filling space. Like, I am jabbing because I have been told that jabbing is good, and so I need to jab. Yan's jab was snapping. That thing was a weapon on Saturday. I am normally someone who calls for, when you see as many jabs as Yan had, just follow it up with a right. Follow it like just a quick or a little uppercut, or double up like a little bop and then a hook coming around it, or kick, whatever. A lot of tools you can use in MMA, right? That jab was so snapping and so effective, I barely was calling for that, which is, again, weird for me. I thought it got Merab going the wrong direction, and it was allowed him to kind of stabilize things and really get his flow, get going in that fight. And once he started to establish that, so much comes off of it. Merab was doing really good in the stand-up, in the stand-up for a while, and able to kind of get his combinations in and land pretty crisp. And his stand-up has improved, no doubt. But once Merab got that jab, now he's figured the distance out. Now he knows I can just do this and I'm out of the way, and that puts me in spot for a takedown, or puts me in a good spot to counter and come back with the right. Once he figured out that jab and the range that he needed, everything else fell into place, including the body work that I do think kind of ends up stealing the show for him on Saturday. But just, I'm going to move on to Merab here in a second. Could not be more impressed with what Petr Yan showed, from the stand-up to the control of the octagon and the takedown defense. All of that put together means a very strong win for Petr Yan and a very deserving champion. Suterin, they have to do better, though, if they have another weekend of that. He had a good fight. Yeah, like, Yan had a great fight. The weird one is... The weird one is like the arm break for Pantoja. And I will agree on the promotion of this fight. It did seem a little lacking. The UFC in a weird spot where you are going to a new television provider after this. And so I think a lot of their brain power is going into that. And I've been critical too. Like I think Dana White has kind of lost his fastball with a lot of the promotion stuff with the UFC because he's so focused on slap fighting, because he's so focused on Zuffa boxing, because he is so focused on the budding friendship with Donald Trump and the meta stuff that he is doing, like all those other things. This guy who his only focus for so long was 3 letters, UFC, he has a little wandering eye syndrome now, right? And so they have done a really bad job of building up a lot of these. And I thought, considering what you had on the line here on Saturday, I thought they could have done a better job, Suterin, to your point, of building this up, where you have, in the one fight, Josh Van, this incredible story. The guy fought twice in 21 days to earn an opportunity at the championship, this new budding star, and working his way into that championship conversation against a guy who has been so clearly number one in that division for a really long time. And so it is, can this incredible story build up to a championship fight? Now, the championship fight did not live up to expectations because the dude's elbow went sideways, but still, you had that. And then in the main event, you have a rematch. Merab Dvalishvili, a win here. He is fighter of the year. He sets the record for most title defenses in the UFC's Bantamweight history, going up against a guy who was a dominant and convincing champion before, but lost his belt to Merab, was claiming hand injury, and has come back and won 3 fights in a row to get into that. So you have two guys who are in the conversation for the best fighters in that division's history anyway, and they are coming together in this one spot and building it up. So yes, there was absolutely a promotional issue there. The UFC's had trouble with that for a little bit, and I would suggest, with the obvious exception of Conor McGregor at 145, they have always been just a little bit doo-doo at promoting the smaller weight classes, the old WEC weight classes. They've never been great at promoting those, aside from Conor McGregor and Jose Aldo. So I do think that there is a lot more that could be done to hype up those fights. 100%. Yeah, I would agree there. Totally. Yusef Goyer 7 saying, hello, bro. Nice live. Thank you. I appreciate that. All these coming over on the Kick channel. Suterin, dear God, I forgot slap boxing was a thing. Yeah, that's, I accept a lot from combat sports and all of that. Slap fighting, I'm out. That's my cutoff. That's where I'm at. Slap boxing is everything wrong with boxing and why MMA became a thing. Weird. Dana White supports it 100%. Hate that. When they learned that choking, someone out was safer than concussions, MMA became a thing. That was always the thing. When they were trying to get the UFC legalized in all these different places. I remember I was in Toronto, somewhere in my closet, deep in the recesses of my closet, or in a Goodwill somewhere. I forget. I may have donated by now. But there was a legalized MMA shirt that I had because when I lived in Ontario, you couldn't put on MMA fights. It was illegal. Human cockfighting is what it was. And a lot of the discussions around it from the pro MMA side were, well, look at boxing that has this pretty brutal track record, and it's constant blows to the brain. MMA, obviously there's a lot of that, but there is the grappling, there's kicks to the leg and the body and all of these things as well. Like there's, not that it is a safe form, it's still a cage fight, but it is at least a little bit safer than boxing because there isn't the standing 8 count or a 10 count. When a referee sees a guy is done, over, Dunsky, and it's not, okay, well, you can get up at 8, so now you get to take more brain damage, and then you're done. Referees can just call it. Leads to a couple of early stoppages, but still safer than the boxing. And you're right, Suterin. Now, to go with slap fighting, it completely goes against everything that they were talking about with boxing. So I don't agree with slap fighting even a little bit. Yusuf Goyer saying, where are you from? I am in Calgary, Alberta, sir. Or ma'am, I guess I shouldn't assume. But let's move now to the co-main event. Let's move now to the other part of the main event, and that is Merab Dvalishvili. I wonder if the grind of being the champion caught up to Merab. he's normally a lock to win the championship rounds. Daniel Cormier was saying, like, when Yan was kind of downloading the information in the first and working that jab, but eating a couple of shots from Merab's improved stand-up, Daniel Cormier was saying, yeah, okay, that's great, but you kind of need to win these first three because you know Merab's getting the last two. That was kind of the assumption. And for Merab, he lost the fourth round, the fifth round. He lost the championship rounds on all three judges' scorecards, on mine as well, on basically everybody's. Most media members had it 50-45, so obviously he lost the final two rounds on those scorecards. He was wearing down. He was obviously slowing down as that fight went on. And this is, again, it's not a knock. A, I would have. B, almost anyone would have. And I will say, I don't know if there is a 135-pounder on the planet who was beating Petr Yan yesterday. There may not have been a 135-pounder ever who was beating Petr Yan yesterday. He was so good. On Saturday. He was so good and so dominant in what he was doing that even if Merab was peak Merab for 25 minutes, I don't know if he's getting that job done. But it did seem a little unusual to have Merab slow down in that way. And you just wonder if 4 title fights in 1 year, I'm pretty sure, like, all of them going a significant length anyway. You wonder if that starts to catch up. And again, it's some of those things, and it has worked for him, and it's what makes Merab. And I'm not saying he needs to come out and now be GSP point fighting in the back part of his career or anything like that. But to hear that he did 5 hard rounds of sparring during the day and then wore out as the fight went on, that stuff worked before. You wonder if you need to dial that back now just a little bit. You probably won't, because it's what made him him, but you do wonder if that starts to kind of dial back now as the career kind of goes on for Merab. I was going to say wind down. He's going to get another opportunity at the title, and he should, but you just wonder if the schedule that put him in the running and a top contender for Fighter of the Year, if that started to wear on him in this fight. It's a win for technique. There is a reason why, like, again, we have seen for years and years, wild fighters just get the job done. And I have said that is a blind spot for me, because when I see a guy who is just wildly swinging things everywhere, my first thought is, okay, a technical whatever can get that. You know, like Clay Guida, when he was going nuts and the hair was going everywhere and he's just and diving in for a takedown. It's like, okay, but someone with good takedown offense or good takedown technique is going to be able to stop that and just beat the shit out of this guy. And eventually there was a ceiling that he reached. Same with guys like Keith Jardine, where, oh, wow, it's so kooky, and wow, the punches can come from anywhere. It's like, okay, but there's a reason why for 200 years coming from here has been the best. Coming from that pocket straight down the middle, that's why it has always been that way. And guys will make it work and everything like that. And it's not that Merab's technique was awful, but you could see he has obviously improved, and like the jab, he's coming across with the right. It's all being very effective. But when it gets a little firefighty, Petr Yan stays in that pocket, stays covered up pretty well, and still straight down the middle, jab right. Dvalishvili, he gets into like he's playing those big stand-up drums where it's just swinging his hands across. That wears you out. That's another part of it too. That is why proper technique is taught. It is because A, it works, right? It is the most effective punches when someone is guarding with the two hands up like this. The most effective punch is a straight punch right in the middle of that. That has always been the way. Other guys have made it work. Other guys have not made technique work, right? Like you do have to have skill and everything that goes around with it. But the other part of it, when I am throwing wild haymakers all over the place, or I am doing this and straight up the middle, I am exuding much less energy when I am doing this. And when you have a 5-round title fight and guys are wearing out at the end, I think it was noteworthy that the guy who was flailing had a little less energy than the guy who was calm, who was stoic, and who was technically sound. So it's a win for proper technique in fighting as well. Really good chat going on in the comments. We have Yusuf from Egypt talking in here. And, we have bettors who were pissed, I guess. Sutern, American now and living in Russia, saying, great live. Appreciate that. Thank you very much. Wild fighter is a bad term for it. A fighter fighting like he is in a corner is better. Okay, there's a little bit of that. Like there is, yes, just wild is a bit, but there are some wild fighters. But yes, like a guy who, he just kind of lets it fly a little bit and lets it be damned over a guy who is strong, solid, whatever. Yes, Totally 100%. Now, again, like Sean O'Malley has pretty good striking technique. Merab kicked the shit out of him. There are ways that both work at different times. But when you have elite level technique against elite level crazy man, elite level technique wins out most of the time. And when you have a guy who is starting to wear down, you start to see that more and more. And the differences start to play out more and more as it goes on. So I thought, yeah, just a win for proper technique there in that one. In the co-main event, it's really unfortunate with Pantoja losing his championship after throwing a kick. Josh Van defends it, kind of topples him over a little bit, and as Pantoja is going down to kind of post, his elbow goes and it's sideways and it's dislocated and it's done. And so obviously the first thought is it sucks. Like that sucks to have happen. Pantoja, dominant champion. I would say for most of his run, no one was better than the next closest contender than Pantoja was to whoever was coming up next. And that is factoring in some very good fighters, but I think that gap between champion and challenger was never more vast than it was at flyweight with Pantoja and what he was doing in the Ultimate Fighting Championship. So to have that title reign come to an end in that way really, really does suck. And it's not great for Van either, right? Like this is this up-and-coming prospect who is now wanting to test himself against the best in the world. He gets the win, he gets the belt, he gets to all the great things that come with that, and he should celebrate it. And we'll get into why in a second. But he doesn't learn anything about himself in this. He doesn't learn anything about the techniques that he has, the proper approaches to martial arts or anything like that. He doesn't learn any of that. He just learns that that guy's elbow went the other way, and now I win. That's what he learned. He learns what it feels like to have your name be called by Bruce Buffer with "and new" playing behind it, or ahead of it. That's what he gets to learn. That being said, it's still the right decision. And the people who are calling for other ones, I vehemently disagree with. The no contest one, I saw that come up a little bit. I don't love that at all. And I can see because it's not a traditional technique that was used, and it's not a traditional way to lose. But your job in there is to hurt your opponent. And fluky as it was, Van used the technique and his opponent got hurt and couldn't continue. That's what this is. That's what ultimately what we are doing in here. Barbaric as it may sound, it is the guys who are in there. I shouldn't say we. I've never fought. I will never fight in a cage. But as the general MMA, what is trying to be accomplished is one guy is trying to hurt another guy. One woman is trying to hurt another woman in the cage. That is what you are trying to do. And so is it weird that it came on a weird trip thing where the guy was just turning and falling and he dislocated his arm? Absolutely. It's weird. But Van still used a technique that led to his opponent getting hurt in a way where he couldn't continue. That is, by every definition of combat sports ever, exactly what you're supposed to do to win. Weird? 100% it's weird. No contest? 100% it's not. That is a win for Josh Van through and through. I also hated the Dominic Cruz tweet where he was saying that Pantoja should have had the choice to continue with the dislocated elbow. I couldn't disagree more with him. Like, there are times, John Jones, his toe was sideways after the first round of the Chael Sonnen fight. He just was able to get Chael Sonnen out of there. There have been times where guys have been able to fight through not as obvious injuries and be able to get the job done or lose, depending on who it is. But when a fighter's elbow dislocates in the cage, I would suggest that would lead to that fighter not being able to intelligently defend himself. Like we talk about being able to have your arm up to defend. If the one guy's arm is just kind of flopping around because his elbow isn't on right, that is not intelligently defending. It's like, oh, well, I can't even feel this anymore, so I'm just going to just flop this at you and slap you in the face a bunch of times, and that's what it's going to be. No, like I get warrior spirit, go out on your shield, all of those things. But the reason we have a referee in there is so that when someone gets hurt, we save you from yourselves. Because yes, we know, as fighters, I would die in the cage. We're aware. You guys are nuts. Like, full respect, 100%. But fighters, generally, a little crazy. And a lot of them will, I would rather die than tap out, all of those sorts of things. Okay, that's why we have referees and commissions and doctors and stuff like that. That's why we film these things. We can't just have guys going out there, yeah, I don't care, I didn't hear no bell. Like it's the safety thing that we're talking about. So, yeah, well, he was only knocked out for a second and then got punched back into consciousness, so he should be able to keep fighting. No, he's injured. He can't defend himself when his arm is going the wrong direction. I just thought, like, Dominic Cruz, I have a ton of respect for. I think he's a great commentator as well. But I am finding more and more that there are some beliefs he has about fighting that I just don't jive with. All of that. But yeah, a little strange. A couple of the takes coming out of that fight. So yeah, very, very, very weird to have all of those going on at from a 23-second fight. Yeah. Should MMA UFC have another match ready to go off if something like this happens, like Bill said? I can kind of, like, I see where, like, having another thing just to be able to throw in is the case, but, like, there were, what, 11, 12 fights on that card anyway? Like, you've had a lot of fights going on as the night was progressing anyway. So, like, that was one of 12. There were some crazy fights, right? Like, you already had Edson Barbosa against Jalen Turner just going crazy in there anyway. So you had your bang for your buck. And then you got a fantastic fight in the main event as well with Dvalishvili and Petr Yan. So I hear what you are saying. And it is funny because there were times where you would get like a post-lim where after the final fight is done, all right, we didn't have time to get to this guy, so we know we just crowned a new champion, but now the number 18th ranked heavyweight is going to take on a new guy from Cambodia, and if we could just pretend that we're all really excited about that, that would be great. Or sometimes they would show on the pay-per-view one fight from the prelims after the pay-per-view was done. But in this era where everyone sees every fight and there's 12 of them, sometimes weird shit happens. That's just kind of the case, in my opinion. I can see where you'd want a standby fight ready because it was kind of a big money fight, but any standby, like any fighter who would agree to a standby fight and make weight for a standby fight and all of that, it's not going to be of the level that would match a championship fight anyway. So I do kind of see where you were coming from in this, Sutern, and maybe on the pay-per-view, now I didn't watch live here, but I do wonder if there is, like on the pay-per-view, it's like, okay, this wasn't great, but earlier tonight on the prelims, we had this banger of a fight. So let's just run that back and let's all feel good about violence again before we get to the main event. Okay? Okay. I wouldn't mind them doing that a little bit more like they used to do with the pay-per-views, but before all the fights were on Fight Pass and everything like that. So a weird one for Josh Van. The whole night kind of throws off the Fighter of the Year discussion, and I haven't gone through everyone's resume just yet. You can, honestly, even with a loss at the end, you can almost make your case still for Merab. I think Van is in the conversation. If this would have been a convincing win over Pantoja, he's in the conversation. But it probably comes down to Makhachev or Topuria again. And we will see what comes out of that. Just quickly, I wasn't on live to talk about the UFC cutter fights that went down. So just quickly, I think any title conversation at lightweight has to include Arman Tsarukyan. Just a dominant performance again, and really showcasing what he can do and showing that he is the best to challenge for the 155-pound championship. I think he has to get the next shot at Topuria, and putting an interim belt on Gaethje against Paddy Pimblett is just dumb. I hate A, that that's headlining, and B, that they put an interim belt on that when you know who the next contender should be. So this whole Dana versus Arman thing, I'm over it. Ian Machado Gary, I've never been the biggest fan. I've felt like he's been trying to be Wish.com, Temu, Conor McGregor for a really long time. And some of the post-fight stuff, he was definitely trying to do that. But this was an excellent performance from him a couple of weeks ago at UFC Cutter. And I think he is deserving of at least being in the conversation to be in the conversation for a championship opportunity at welterweight. I think there are a couple of deserving fighters ahead of him, but he has had a good year in terms of like kind of rising through the ranks of the Ultimate Fighting Championship. So just wanted to get a couple extra thoughts in there on the UFC stuff that I haven't been able to over the last couple of weeks. Hey, this stream's gone a little long, hasn't it? We're already at a minute, or not a minute, we're at an hour 45 of live on a couple of the platforms, and I've been talking for an hour 35 of it. And a lot of that is thanks to Swift Energy. Head over to swiftenergy.gg, use the code PKPrimetime, get 25% off, some great fuel, really good flavors as well, and helps you with the focus to get through podcast, gaming session, epic sports watching nights, whatever you want, whatever you need, just that little bit extra for. Swift Energy can help you out. And while you're there, use the code PKPrimetime for 25% off.